The United States, over the 20th century, now 25 years behind us, was a period of time in which, at least in the United States, we congratulated ourselves on having overcome class divisions. And by that was generally meant that we were a huge, vast, successfully middle-class society. Yes, we had a few people very wealthy for historical reasons or because they were great actresses or whatever. And we had a few very poor people, that's true, but they were marginal. And what was the core of the United States was a vast middle class, which had an enviable standard of living, had its own home in most cases, its own automobile or more than one, the ability to send children to college, university, to take a vacation, a whole lot of signs of a vast middle. So that, for example, in the 60s and 70s, it was very common to read yet another article or read yet another book or hear yet another politician or business leader give a speech on the 4th of July, our Independence Day, about what a fantastic success we were, how exceptional the United States was. And it was this big, vast middle class that was proof positive that led us to congratulate ourselves in that way. Well, for the last 40 years, as every statistical series maintained either by the government or by universities or by private statistical services will attest, we have destroyed that middle class. We are now a society not only split between the rich and everybody else, but we are riven by the consciousness of it all. That is, it's on everyone's mind. It is obvious. I'll give you just one of countless examples. In the last few weeks, we have finally passed the governmental budget for the coming years, and the one that President Trump called a big, beautiful bill. Well, the bottom line of that bill, which is what has mostly drawn public attention, is that it perpetuates tax cuts passed initially in the first presidency of Mr. Trump. Those were supposed to expire at the end of this year. The new bill perpetuates them, cancels their expiration, and adds a whole new set of additional tax cuts, overwhelmingly for corporations and the richest 10%. And this at a time when the United States' deficit, and I want to remind everyone that the United States is the world's largest debtor country right now, and is adding right now to that debt by the trillions annually, and that this new bill will continue doing that for the next decade unless it is amended. This is an extraordinarily deep division in our society, producing all the things that unequal distributions of wealth always produce: bitterness, envy, and I mean that from the rich towards those falling below them, and among the mass at the bottom looking up at the rich. This is a country that therefore has cheered the disintegration of Elon Musk and his position, because he exemplified literally in himself the extraordinary wealth that existed and that can, when it self-destructs, bring cheers from those who are mere spectators. Number two, the effort of this government to deal with a debt problem that is already very scary. Our national debt is much above our GDP, but trying to deal with the fact that it is this government currently making the deficit of this already over-indebted country even worse, seeking to offset some of that by imposing tariffs, and then you have to take a deep breath, on everyone else in the world. It is extraordinary. The problems of the United States, the president says, are going to be solved by hurting every other country, because a tariff is paid first and foremost by an American importing company. Now, of course, that corporation will do everything in its power to handle the tariff cost the way it handles every other cost that arises, by either passing it on to the final consumer in a higher price, which would then mean inflation in the United States, or going back to the country from which the imports come and begging them to lower their prices and to thereby help the importing company make that tariff payment that Uncle Sam requires. In other words, squeeze the American consumer or squeeze the rest of the world in order to help the United States. That's what this program is. And what it has done is break, in an important way, the entire post-World War II global political alignment. It is now well known that some of the worst hurt by all this are our closest allies. The deal made with Japan, the threats hanging over the relationship between the United States on the one hand and its two major trading partners, Canada and Mexico, on the other. These are now destroyed alliances. Canadians are not taking their tourist time in the United States the way they once did. The damage to them, the damage to the American tourism industry, incalculable and growing as I speak to you. A broken set of alignments and alliances at the same time that the United States wants to mobilize those same countries to join it in tilting against the other new power block in the world economy, which is the People's Republic of China and the careful alliances it is building around the BRICS countries. This is a self-contradictory program. Those alliances are being strained to the breaking point. They're not being strengthened. It's the opposite that's happening to them. That's why the EU is having meetings with the Chinese. That's why the Canadians are working overtime to find Chinese markets for what they used to send to the United States. These are unspeakable self-destructions. And I'll give you one last example of the electric vehicle. 15 years ago, a competition emerged in which virtually all of the world's automobile companies participated. Okay, at the end of the last 15 years, there's a clear winner, which the whole world that pays attention to these things knows. And the winner are the Chinese. They've done the best job of developing the highest quality and the lowest price of electric vehicle, in particular the BYD Corporation. How has the United States coped with having lost that competition to the BYD Corporation? In the classic way of a loser, it has erected a tariff wall against Chinese electric vehicles. It began under Mr. Trump, 25% or so. It was raised under President Biden to 100%. And let me now finish this point by telling you how and why that is a self-destructive act of the United States. Here's what it means. Every American company that needs either cars or trucks as inputs to whatever it does cannot afford to buy a Chinese electric vehicle. So, for example, if it costs $30,000, an American company buying that truck would have to come up with $30,000 to pay the Chinese to ship the truck or the car, and then would have to pay Uncle Sam the tariff, 100%, another $30,000. And so the total cost to the American company is $60,000 for something as fundamental as a car or a truck. The American company won't do it. It will settle for a Tesla or a Toyota or a Ford or a General Motors. They also have electric cars and trucks, but they are of a lower quality than the BYD, and they will cost the American $40,000 to $50,000. That means, and here's the punchline, that every competitor of the United States can and is buying BYD cars and trucks for $30,000, whereas the American competitor has to settle for a poorer quality car or truck and pay significantly more for it. And you know what that means? That is a competitive dead end or death sentence, if you like, for the United States across the board. Protecting the producers of electric cars in the United States by a tariff against BYD has as its price the loss of many more jobs across the economy of the United States. Final point. Why would all of these things be happening? Why would there not be steps taken to go in exactly the opposite direction? And the answer to that is that you are watching a system implode. You are watching American capitalism desperate. Our government and the very person leading it are symptomatic of all of this. But the policies are so self-destructive that you can see the decline of an empire in the desperate gestural way. All of this is being done under a slogan of making America first, whereas the reality is America is running in the opposite direction and making good progress getting there.